Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. My name is Chad, and in this video, we're going to learn about one of my favorite features of JavaScript, optional chaining. So how many of you have run into a type error when trying to read a property from something that's undefined, or maybe call a function that doesn't exist? If you've run into that, then optional chaining will not only help your code become cleaner, but it'll also prevent that type error situation entirely, which results, of course, in safer, more predictable code. So optional chaining allows you to safely retrieve a value or even call a function from a nested object when any references along the way could be undefined or null. Let's take a look at an example here to see how that can help. And just as a note, I'm using the Quokka, not sure how to pronounce that, extension for VS Code. So that's just a great code playground to execute code in real time and see output. So we have a couple dogs here. We've got Doug, whose owner is Carl, and Luna, who doesn't have an owner yet because she was just born. What if we want to log out the name of each dog's owner? Maybe we'd do something like this in a loop. So we'd iterate over the dogs array, maybe with for each. And for each one, we'll log out dog.name is owned by dog.owner.name.first. And immediately here you can see that we get an error trying to log out Luna's owner because she doesn't have one and the owner and name properties don't exist. So we see Doug is owned by Carl, that's good, and then cannot read properties of undefined reading name. So that in this case, for Luna, we're trying to access the name property on the owner object, which doesn't exist, so it's undefined. Now, without optional chaining, we might fix it with something like this. We'll put a condition around this and say if dog.owner exists and dog.owner.name exists, then we can log that out. And that looks good. Now we see Doug is owned by Carl, and we don't see a log statement for Luna because this condition protected that code from being executed. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that solution, but optional chaining definitely makes this easier and cleaner. So if we change this to dog.owner?name, then we get the same result. Nice. So at runtime, the optional chaining operator, the ? Dot, signals to JavaScript that the preceding reference, in this case owner, might be null or undefined. And if it is indeed null or undefined, the property access immediately short circuits with a result of undefined and doesn't check any more properties. So in the case of Luna, JavaScript detects, hey, this owner property is undefined, so I'm going to bail out of this condition right here and not even go and check this name property. Cool. The optional chaining operator also works for functions too. So let's say we want to add a bark function, and we'll just log out I can bark. We'll add that function to Doug, but we won't add it to Luna because she's too young and maybe she just can't bark yet. Now let's try getting the dogs to bark without using optional chaining. So if we call bark right there, we immediately see dog.bark is not a function. We did see that Doug barked, but we still get that error. And that's expected because, of course, Luna doesn't have that bark function. Adding the optional chaining operator fixes the issue. So this is kind of a weird syntax here, but we add it before the parentheses with a ? Dot. So now we see the original log statement and I can bark from Doug and nothing from Luna. And we also don't see an error. Okay, one last use case. Let's add a toys array to Doug and we'll say that his favorite toy is a squirrel. And again, since Luna is too young, she doesn't have any favorite toys yet. so we'll leave that array off for now. Now if we try to print out each dog's favorite toy, we'll get an error. So we'll log out dog.name, and their favorite toy is dog.toys at index 0. And of course, as expected, we get an error here because we can't read the index of 0 on the toys array on Luna because that toys array doesn't exist. Using a similar syntax to the function example, adding the optional chaining operator fixes the problem here. So we add a question mark dot, and we see the original log statements, and then Doug's favorite toy is squirrel, and Luna's favorite toy is undefined. And that illustrates another important point of the optional chaining operator, which you may have noticed here, but when JavaScript detects that the preceding reference is undefined or null, in this case toys, it immediately returns undefined from that property access. And you can see that here, where Luna's favorite toy is undefined. And that's all for the optional chaining operator. If you weren't aware of this JavaScript feature, I really hope it helps to make your code a bit cleaner and safer. Personally, I love using it, and it's definitely one of my favorite aspects of JavaScript. If you could see yourself putting this operator to use on your projects, or you already do and you enjoyed the refresher, consider liking the video. If you're interested in more content like this, please do subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future uploads, and let me know in the comments section down below if you have a question or request for a particular video. As always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.